Uhuru, Uhuru, and welcome to African People's Solidarity Day, hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee. My name is Ali Ayello, and I'm a member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Tonight, we are talking about the question of white people's role in the struggle for Black liberation. 44 years ago, in 1976, the African People's Socialist Party answered that question by forming the African People's Solidarity Committee, also known as APSC. Our mandate is to organize other white people to build the movement of reparations and genuine solidarity with the liberation of African people. We salute our incredible leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who developed the political theory of African internationalism and who represents the leadership of the African Revolution around the world, and who we are honored to have in tonight's program. Uhuru, and welcome, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. We also salute Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela, who has put on the ground Chairman Omali Yeshitela's vision of the Black Power Blueprint, and who leads the more than 50 economic institutions of the party, of the African People's Socialist Party. And lastly, I want to salute the Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who we will be hearing from first on tonight's program, and who will be giving us a presentation of the history of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And Chairwoman Penny is honored to have been present when the African People's Socialist Party held the founding conference of the Solidarity Committee in the fall of 1976, and has been a cadre member of the African People's Solidarity Committee ever since. In 2001, she published the groundbreaking book, Overturning the Culture of Violence, which, under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, detailed the complicity and participation of white people in the historical assaults and colonial violence against African and other oppressed peoples. So I now want to bring up and welcome Chairwoman Penny Hess. Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny.
Uhuru, thank you, Ali. And thank you for that introduction. I want to welcome everybody here tonight to the 44th anniversary of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And we're going to be summing up this historic formation of this organization 44 years ago today. I want to begin by welcoming our leadership and saluting in the most profound way Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who we have the profound honor of being here with us tonight, who will be summing up. Welcome, Chairman, and Uhuru. And again, I want to welcome all of you. And I want to begin I want to give a little bit of the history of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which means, also a little bit about the party, because we are an organization of the African People's Socialist Party. But I think that it is really just a very deep, profound historical reality that we're living in a period when imperialism, as the chairman has told us, is in a very deep crisis. In fact, the chairman has called it the uneasy equilibrium. And we see that playing out from everything from the electoral campaign to the rise of, just Chairman Omali Yeshitela's analysis that he's putting out several times a week. And we see that, in addition to the economic and political and health crisis created by the COVID-19 or the colonial virus, as the party has called it, we see the deepening of the economic crisis of imperialism. And we're living in this profound period when the police colonial murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which the world witnessed, and the subsequent powerful resistance led by the African working class has ignited and brought to the surface this colonial question that is the foundation of every contradiction every issue, every problem in the world today, and certainly inside the borders of the United States. It rips open the fact that the ground here in the US and around the world is soaked in the blood of African people, the blood of the indigenous people, and the oppressed and colonized peoples on the planet Earth. And that we see white people awakening, being awakened by the leadership of the African working class and the African People's Socialist Party and African internationalism, and raising and beginning to awaken to these essential questions, the question of reparations, the question of our relationship to African people, our role sitting on this pedestal of the oppression of and the enslavement of Africans and oppressed peoples. How do we rectify that? How do we pay reparations? How do we take a stand that is in genuine solidarity with the liberation of African people and oppressed people on this planet? But it is so incredible to think that this question, this issue was answered almost half a century ago by Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party with the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Next slide. So, the chairman wrote in the political report to the plenary, the party's plenary this year, actually, the absolute unity of white people with their own ruling class has been forever fractured by the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And that's just a little bit of what the chairman has written, but, very profound, because just think about the hundreds of years that white people have built our existence at the expense of African people, and that this is the first time that the revolutionary liberation movement of the African population, of African people all around the world, to liberate Africa, to destroy the colonial borders, and to liberate all of the stolen resources and stolen labor of African people to be returned to the African Revolution. But this is the first time that the African Revolution has ever organized the colonizer population to be under its leadership. And it was brilliant. And I also want to say that in saluting Chairman Omali Yeshitela, that I recognize that, as the chairman has summed up, that there has been and continues to be, but there was a very brutal, vicious counterinsurgency movement, counterinsurgency war led by US imperialism and the US government against the African Revolution inside the borders of the United States and against revolutionary movements all around the world. And that most revolutionary movements recognized and saluted the African Revolution inside US borders and understood that their liberation was tied to this incredible leadership of the African working class inside US borders that was weakening and weakening US imperialist stranglehold over the peoples on the planet Earth. And the Vietnamese recognized very, very clearly that the struggle of African people inside the US borders was a second front that US imperialism was forced to fight. And they saw the colonized Africans as their allies and in genuine solidarity as a leader of the world revolution. And, that revolution was destroyed. And when I look at that and I see, that this counterinsurgency inside the US not only destroyed the organizations of the African Revolution, it assassinated its leaders such as Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and many others. And it destroyed organization, it imprisoned some of the leaders of the African Revolution, some of whom, such as Sundiata Acoli, are still in prison today. And that it also worked to destroy the ideas of the revolution. the fact that there must be a revolution, that the system built on the backs of African people must be destroyed, and that, you know, this state power must be destroyed, led by the African working class, that there must be a party of the African working class. All of these ideas were wiped out, or the US attempted to wipe them out. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela stood strong, stood there against all of the hurricane force, gale force winds of imperialism, worked against that, at times single-handedly, to fight for the completion of the Black Revolution of the 60s, of the African Revolution of the 60s, and of the revolutions, the anti-colonial revolutions of the oppressed peoples on the planet Earth. And I shudder to think what this world would be today without Chairman Omali Yeshitela out there solving all these problems, finding out why did the African Revolution suffer a defeat? Why did the revolutions of the world suffer a defeat? And he answered all the reasons why, and has empowered African people and the oppressed of the world to be able to win today. And we will talk about that a lot more with him now. I also want to salute tonight Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, who leads much of all of the political front of the political economic front of the African People's Socialist Party, the over 50 institutions, including the Black Power Blueprint, who is an amazing and powerful African woman leader of the African Revolution, under whose amazing leadership those of us in APSC work and are organized. And I want to, next slide, please. I want to also salute the National Central Committee of the party, including President Kalambai Andanet of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa, leader of the African Socialist International, the organization of the African People's Socialist Parties all around the world. Of course, Chairman Omali Yeshitela again, Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, Akile Anayi, the director of the party's agitation and propaganda, Dr. Aisha Fields, the leader of the All African Peoples Empowerment the All African Peoples Empowerment, and I know there's something else, project, and Yejide Orinmila, president of the African National Women's Organization, Kobina Bantu Shango, the Southern Regional Organizer of the party, Malika Alexander, who's here in St. Louis, the Midwest Regional Organizer of the party, and Bakari Olatunji, who is the Western Region Organizer of the party. And I say this because I want to make it clear that these are the leaders. This is not all the rank and file and the many members of the party, but these are the leaders, and these people are visible. These are African people who put themselves on the line to fight for the liberation of Africa and African people, regardless of the personal cost to them every single day. And I see these white organizations, they're very mysterious. They might be called a party or whatever. You never know who are the leaders, who's the chair, who's the secretary general. But the African People's Socialist Party is completely out there and transparent. All of their leadership is presented in the Burning Spear newspaper every month. And also I want to salute the leadership, the National Central Committee of African People's Solidarity Committee, my incredible comrades. I'm going to say that we don't have a lot of time tonight to have this PowerPoint, but we're going to have other events in the future in this coming year, leading up to our 45th anniversary as APSC, in which we will go deeper and we'll bring a lot more comrades into a discussion of this incredible history of the African People's Solidarity Committee. But I want to salute our Secretary General, Allison Haney, just a powerful, powerful comrade who's been in the movement for many, many years, most of the 44 years, and who people may know as the manager of Uhuru Furniture Store in Philadelphia under the direct leadership of the Office of Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela. I want to salute Comrade Kitty Riley, who people know in so many different fronts. She is the director of the Office of Reparations and Economic Development, and also directly under the leadership of the Office of Deputy Chair and Deputy Chair Onizine herself. Kitty works as was assigned to work as a project director of the Black Power Blueprint here in St. Louis, which is amazing, amazing. And then I want to salute Comrade Dessie Neville, the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, who so many people know USM, and Comrade Dessie, and just the amazing work and presentations and just, you know, great, amazing stand. And the stand of reparations that Dessie leads, so many, the 150 cities of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, just doing a dynamic job. I want to salute Comrade Lisa Watson, who is our APSC Agitprop director, just does so much and coordinated this event tonight. Comrade Maureen Wagner, who has been assigned by the Office of Deputy Chair to lead Uhuru Foods and Pies, who is the director of Uhuru Foods and Pies, is out in Oakland under the leadership of Bakri Olatunji as the regional organizer there. Just really salute the work of Comrade Maureen, who has also been organizing and leading the grants committee and so much more. Comrade Stephanie Midler, just our dynamic Uhuru Furniture Oakland, who is the coordinator of Uhuru Furniture in Oakland, just under the leadership of Deputy Chair, just amazing dynamic comrade. Our comrade Casey Mackey, who is the Midwest regional organizer here in St. Louis, to say Uhuru. Comrade Casey just does an amazing job here. Comrade Ali Ayello, who is the Southern regional organizer based in St. Pete, also organizing just really incredibly. Comrade Hallie Murray, the Northern regional organizer up in Boston, also the coordinator of Uhuru Planet Reparations Apparel, just another great comrade. And Comrade Janice Kant, who just brings so much to this movement, is also works directly in the Office of Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela and is the coordinator of Uhuru Foods and Pies in St. Petersburg. So I'm going to just run through this very quickly and say that the African People's Socialist Party and the theory of African internationalism led the party to the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And African internationalism is the political theory that sees the world through the eyes of the African working class. It turns history right side up. It's why the chairman gives an analysis of everything that is electrifying, that makes you feel that you can understand the world for the first time, that all of a sudden you're a genius, you're smart because you can see what it is and how things got to be the way it is, and not this narrative of the colonizer, the narrative of the oppressor that we're fed every day by our ruling class, our family, our schools, the white community, and the media. So it was the party's theory, the African internationalism, that brought the chairman to the conclusion that white people sitting on the pedestal, the oppression of African people as the colonizer nation that must be turned right side up, and that it is the African working class that must lead the revolution for the liberation of African people and the worldwide revolution. And we're going to talk more about that tonight and why that has to be, because we can look at our history and see that all of the struggles of white workers have been ones of opportunism, that we have gained our rights at the expense of African people, never in solidarity, and that the African working class must lead this. Next slide. That the party's founding of the African People's Solidarity Committee is part of a strategy to defeat counterinsurgency and isolation of the African Revolution. That the APSC was founded, this is September 30th, 1976. This is some pictures who was there at that time. And next slide. This was an article that was in the Burning Spear in March of 1977, Unite with US African Struggle. And the foundation, the formation of APSC, and also APSC. This is November 1977, African People's Solidarity Committee marching against opportunism. So one of the first struggles that APSC was involved in, and I'm just limiting this to a tiny, tiny bit of what APSC has taken on under the leadership of the party, was the struggle to free Dessie Woods' smash colonial violence. And that was a really critical and important struggle, because the white left and feminist movement that rose up off of the defeat, out of the ashes of the defeat of the African Revolution of the 1960s, in the 70s, were defending African women. There was another case somewhat similar to that of Dessie Woods, of Joanne Little, an African woman who defended herself, and that the white feminist movement was saying that it was a woman's right to self-defense. Now, Dessie Woods was an African working class woman who was hitchhiking with her friend to go to a prison in Georgia to visit her friend's brother. And they were picked up by a white man who ended up taking them out into the woods, out into the country, and pulling a gun on them and was going to rape them. But Dessie Woods fought with the man for his gun. She got it, she shot him, she killed him, they left him there, and she was charged with 22 years in prison for killing a white man that tried to rape her and her friend. And the African People's Socialist Party took that on as with an incredible slogan of Free Dessie Woods, Smash Colonial Violence. And it was a really powerful slogan in this time of the deepest era of counterinsurgency being waged against the African working class. It brought back the colonial question to the forefront. And the African People's Socialist Party also used it as a way of working to reunite the African Revolution of that time, all of the different African organizations, and leading to the formation of the African National Prison Organization a few years later. Dessie Woods was freed in the early 80s, and she also lived in Oakland and was a powerful woman who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But she was really an incredible force. So this is just quickly, next slide, Demisha Blackearth, who was a young African woman who led the struggle all around the world. This is way before, of course, no social media, no emails, but yet the struggle to free Dessie Woods was known in Japan, all throughout Europe, all throughout the world. Were magazines and newspapers that published the story of Dessie Woods, and Demisha Blackearth and others traveled around Europe and did a tour for to win people to free Dessie Woods. It was a very powerful movement. Next slide. In 1982, the African People's Socialist Party made reparations a household word. Nobody knew what reparations meant then. You know, we had a teach-in here last week out in the park, in Tower Grove Park. You know, we started out by asking people, what does reparations mean? And I mean, this woman, you know, who came to it gave a beautiful statement of what reparations means. And it was the African People's Socialist Party that made that possible, because the goal of the party was to make reparations a household word, but also to make it a revolutionary demand. It's not a Band-Aid, it's not a favor, it's what is owed to African people for stolen labor, for stolen resources, for the torture and terror of African people that we have carried out, and for the ongoing ongoing theft of African labor and resources that has continued on since the end of chattel slavery inside the US and around the world. This was a picture of the first tribunal on reparations to African people. Just an amazing event in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, in 1982. And it put the question of reparations on the map. And now if people know, and you read about it, you know, even in the electoral campaign and in the primaries, the question of reparations came up. It had to be discussed because it is out there, and it is out there because of the African People's Socialist Party. Believe me, nobody heard of it then. Nobody knew. I mean, African people did, but no white people knew even what reparations was. And this was a very, very powerful event in Brooklyn in 1982. And you can see in the next slide, Chairman Omali Yeshitela marching, and you can see the banner, "We demand reparations for 400 years, 500 years of slavery and colonial treatment." That was, this is probably in the 80s. Next slide. And the party, again, made reparations a revolutionary demand. This is a photo of the African March on Washington that was held, I believe, in 1983, a year after the tribunal. And the party went with a giant banner that took up the whole street, red, peace, and black power. And as you can see, that it says, "We demand," and reparations is the first demand on that banner. Next slide. I also want to say that Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the headquarters of the African People's Socialist Party was in Oakland, California for about 12 years or more, in which there's so much to say about that. The chairman has summed it up in the political reports, in the last 2 political reports to the party congresses. It's something that must be written because Oakland was the headquarters of the Black Panther Party in the 1960s, but the counterinsurgency, this war against the African Revolution and the African community was so intense that in the city of Oakland, where the Black Panther Party had been renowned around the world, where they had once marched on the shores and did their workouts and their marches right on the shores of Lake Merritt, that by the time the party came there in the late 70s and very early 80s, that, these ideas were wiped out, and the US government had already brought crack cocaine inside the African communities as a way of salting the earth to make sure that African people would never rise up again. And we saw this period of massive prison building, and the state of California was the leader of that. Vicious war on the African community. Next slide. Measure O was an amazing housing initiative put on the ballot in 1984 and I believe again in 1986 that got over 22,000 votes in Oakland, that called for Black community control of housing and divided all the neighborhoods in Oakland that into, I think, about 7 or 8 different neighborhoods in which rents could be no more than 25% of the average income of that neighborhood. So it was basically voting for socialism led by the African working class. And of course, landlords just launched a huge campaign to fight it, but it was an amazing fight. And this is coming back. This is coming down the stairs at the Oakland Alameda County Hall. And this is where we handed in the 30,000 signatures on the ballot to go on the ballot. And it was an amazing day. The next slide was the Measure O office in the Fruitvale neighborhood of Oakland. It was so powerful. Next slide is, this is at the, after the funeral of Huey Newton, who was assassinated in Oakland, I believe in in 1989, and the San Francisco Chronicle was slandering Huey Newton and just called him from prime minister to bum. And the African People's Socialist Party mobilized the people. That's a whole long story in Oakland in itself, that could be a film, could be a movie, that just in an electrifying way, led by Biko Lumumba, who was a powerful, powerful, incredible leader of the party at that time, and who went down into West Oakland to where Huey was murdered, and just brought the people together. The party were the honor guard at the funeral home, and 10,000 Africans waited in line to go to that funeral home to pay their respects to Huey Newton. And then thousands upon thousands came out after the funeral in this incredible march, and the African People's Socialist Party was leading that. And at the end of that week, the Chronicle had to raise up and pay its salutes to Huey Newton for who he had been in the African Revolution in the 1960s due to the work of the African People's Socialist Party. I also want to say that we were assigned, the African People's Solidarity Committee was assigned to hold the March Against Genocide. And it was something that we did for many, many years. And we will be doing the March for Reparations this week. We actually, this year, but this first picture on the left-hand side is the, I think it's the very first one, which was in 1979. And was called the Walk Against Genocide. And we raised money. And we can see over here is a somewhat later one, but in the 80s, Comrade Kitty is leading that with a great banner to stop the war against the African community. Next slide. This is an incredible March Against Genocide in probably the late 80s, early 90s. It's Comrade Mark Anderson. I see Comrade Ruby. I see members of Unión del Barrio and other forces in this. And we marched from Oakland to down Telegraph Avenue into Berkeley. And it was powerful, and against genocide, for reparations. Also, there was struggle made by the African People's Socialist Party.
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay, there was struggle made by the party in 1985 against APSC for, just for opportunism and our stance. And that's a whole long struggle and story, and I want to talk about that. But the chairman led struggle with us. To make a long story short, some of APSC, and APSC split then because some people left because they did not unite with being under the leadership of the African working class. They wanted to be a parallel organization. And APSC united though, and we united that African internationalism was our worldview. We adopted that, and therefore we owe reparations, and that we said the African People's Socialist Party doesn't have to ask us anymore, that we are fighting for reparations and going to build it. And so next slide, that, you can see one of our marches in that period, white citizens' reparations to the Black community. This is way back, this is early 80s, or 85 or 86. And we made a commitment that reparations, that we would create institutions of reparations that were the party's institutions, but we had the responsibility to coordinate them in that period so that there could be a division of labor and the party continued to work and organize in the African community. So we started Uhuru Foods and Pies in Oakland with these incredible street fairs, and we always had like sort of position papers on banners, and just built a tremendous amount of support. And Uhuru Foods and Pies now is under the party's Black Star Industries, led by the Office of Deputy Chair, and still does, street fairs, except for this year because of COVID, still out there all these years later. The African People's Socialist Party, the PIE campaign, all of that in the Bay Area. It's been going on 30, even 40 years. It is so, so powerful. And it is part of the culture of the Bay Area. Here's next slide. There's more pictures of some of the early street fairs out there in all kinds of situations. Smash the crime bill, stop US war against the African community. People lined up and people came to the booth because of the political stand and the call for reparations. Next slide. Comrades Raya and Ali out there at a Dead show, the Grateful Dead were always out there with food, selling food at the Grateful Dead shows back in the day. Next slide, Uhuru Bakery Cafe, an amazing, beautiful place. Next slide, a party institute had amazing food. It was just an incredible center, a hub in Oakland. Next slide, this is a picture of this was the front of the bakery, and the chairman, every Sunday night, we would have events, political events, and Chairman Omali Yeshitela would speak. And it was just a great, great place. Also the founding of Uhuru Furniture Stores in Oakland. Next slide. Next slide. The Uhuru Furniture Bazaar in Philly. Back in the day, was starting, that was probably in the 90s, but now, these institutions are clearly coordinated by and under the leadership of Deputy Chair Onasene Yeshitela, Black Star Industries, and African People's Education and Defense Fund. Excuse me. Next slide. So we also just salute the Black Power Blueprint, the incredible, incredible institution here in the North St. Louis, building political and economic power in the hands of the African working class. That's the whole story, but there will be some upcoming web shows on that we want to invite everybody to. Next slide. USM today, out there, winning reparations, fighting for reparations. And next slide, the campaign to make Wall Street pay reparations that's going on, very exciting. And USM is in 153 cities in the United States. And this was at Black is Back last year, and we're calling on everybody to come to Washington, D.C. for the Black is Back demonstration march on the White House right after the election, November 7th and 8th of this year. So Uhuru, there's so much more to say. I left out many years here, but we can see the significance of this African People's Solidarity Committee as a strategy of the African People's Socialist Party to create a force articulating Black power in whiteface inside the belly of the beast, something that is our responsibility to do, to go into the white community, raise these questions, demand that white people jump off the pedestal and join in solidarity with African people, rectify our relationship to the African working class, to indigenous people, to the world, to be part of the world, not the enforcers, not the police, not the soldiers, not the occupying armies and drone operators that we are expected to be, not living off our stomachs and pocketbooks, but in genuine solidarity and under the leadership of the African working class, which is the only force that can unite the entire world to defeat imperialism and parasitic capitalism once and for all, and for the liberation of the indigenous people all throughout the Americas, African people, the Arab people, Asians, and all the oppressed and colonized people in the world, and offers us an opportunity to join into this incredible, incredible revolution that is the only force that can save this planet, and that offers a vision in which all human beings can live, no one at the expense of anybody else. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny, what an incredible presentation in history of APSC. And I just feel an incredible honor to be part of this organization that has such an amazing history under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So really just appreciate you laying out that history for all of us. So we want to let you know that after the presentations from the Chairwoman, from Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess, which are coming up next, we will hear some statements from APSC members and supporters and open it up for your participation. So please submit questions and comments in the Q&A feature on Zoom at the bottom of the screen, as the chat feature is not available. And if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, please enter your questions in the comments section and they will get addressed after the main presentation. So right now, I would like to welcome our very special guest to join Chairwoman Penny on our virtual stage. I'd like to welcome Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela is the founder of the African People's Socialist Party and the African Socialist International. Chairman Omali is the acknowledged leader of the African nation. He has led the world in defining what the African nation is, a nation that will be consolidated by the victory of the worldwide African Revolution. Chairman Omali has given the world the science of African internationalism that proves that it was the assault on Africa, the sale of African human beings, and the colonial theft of African labor, resources, land, and genius that built the wealth and power of the capitalist system and the pedestal upon which all white people sit. Chairman Omali Yeshitela has built the on-the-ground organization led by the African working class around the world and created the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976 to send white people behind enemy lines as the voice of Black power in white face. So now I want to welcome Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru, thank you so much, comrade. Thank you so much, Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Thank you so much for being on tonight on this historic occasion. And I can't express just my profound admiration. I don't even have the words to say for you who have spent your life fighting for the interests of the African working class, that you have always upheld the African working class, always upheld them as the entire world joined in slandering African people and especially the African working class, and just kept alive the revolutionary zeal, went about solving every political question, but not in some ivory tower, out there on the streets in the heat of battle constantly. And that, you know, I can only say that when I think back at the founding conference of the African People's Solidarity Committee 44 years ago, 1976, that one of the things that really struck me, besides the 13-hour presentation that you gave on dialectical materialism, which was really, now we would call it on African internationalism. It was really on the basis of this evolution of the African People's Socialist Party, and you were taking on Marx and talking about primitive accumulation and just in such a dialectical way that, you know, did not say, you know, just continue to uphold who Marx was, but to say that he made an error, that his error was, you know, living on the pedestal of the oppression of African people and could not see the essential question. And there's a little something on page 879 of Capital, you know, where he talks about primitive accumulation, but you show how he never could come to the conclusion that therefore it would be the African working class that could lead. And I was really moved, I just want to say, by the African People's Socialist Party when I first met it, because, and it really, some of the thing that really won me was how serious it is and how disciplined it is. And I, you know, even and just the ideas that you were putting out were so electrifying and so dynamic and incredible that I just knew that this is where I had to be. This is where I had to be, because this is very serious about taking on the world. And the party doesn't play. White people, we're the colonizers, so we're used to cynicism and sarcasm and not taking anything seriously. But the party is very serious and very, just aspires to something that has, the swag, as you say, of the African working class. So, I just really want to salute that and say that one of the things that you've always said is that you were born in the period when revolution was the main trend in the world. And I did not have a political consciousness during much of that time, but nevertheless, I felt that in the younger days, that there was Vietnam and Che and China and, and Cuba and revolution everywhere. And you're the one that summed up counterinsurgency and how the US government attacked these movements. And that, I just think of that, to me, it's very profound and very moving, because I think back to that period and of all the literally millions and hundreds of millions of people who fought for their liberation, of colonized people who fought. And like the Vietnamese won militarily, but lost the political battle, the economic battle led by worldwide imperialism. So, I just wanted you to address that, this whole question of the world as it was and the world as it is now that you've brought us to.
Uhuru, first of all, I want to express my appreciation for this discussion on today, for this celebration of the 44-year history of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and to the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee. I was moved looking at the PowerPoint that was shown for a number of reasons. One is we looked at how the African People's Solidarity Committee itself was forged into an incredibly significant organization today. I'm reminded that when we founded the African People's Solidarity Committee, and it needs repeating that we founded the African People's Solidarity Committee, that we ran into all kinds of headwinds. We ran into headwinds from forces who were part of what at the time was characterized as the Black Liberation Movement, many of whom would say to us that, well, it's, well, you do it, but we wouldn't do it, or to the effect that the most slanderous thing, of course, from the side of the African question was that somehow that's the white people who run things, who get the money. I remember even the fight that we waged around the issue of reparations. We did. The African People's Socialist Party did. We are the ones who took the reparations issue out of the closet and said that it's not something that can be won by just a handful of people with briefcases who are going to some legislative body, either locally, nationally, internationally, or going to some kind of court. That reparations will be achieved when the masses is grasped by the masses of African people. Therefore, our strategy has to be to go to the people, to make reparations a household word, not just something that's spoken of in courts and things like that. And we did that. We initiated the first tribunal, world tribunal of reparations in 1982. And this is at a time where the person who has been attributed who's been characterized as the father of the reparations movement, fought tooth and nail to keep us from even being able to do that. And just looking at this, and it reminds us that when I say this, I mean the PowerPoint. Part of what it does is reminds us that the struggle is protracted. And you look at the history of the African People's Socialist Party, which is remarkable. There's no organization that's comparable to what it is that we have achieved, what it is that we developed, the theory that we created, the refusal to simply accept the worldview that was brought to us by either failed leaders or by what was put forth as the leadership at that time. Absolute refusal to do that and to engage in serious struggle. And the fact is that when the party came into existence, the African Revolution had suffered a brutal, murderous assault and defeat. I mean, dead people were all around, and there was an assumption that the revolution was over. And we said that our responsibility is to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. It can't die. We wouldn't let it die. And so at the moment when some of the most important attacks were made on the revolution, when Fred Hampton was killed, when all around the world we saw death and destruction being imposed on the revolutionary movement, and many people who had previously been characterized themselves as revolutionaries had gone underground or who had disappeared or who had quit the field, it was the African People's Socialist Party that took up all that space. And the fact is that that you showed the party with the Huey P. Newton's funeral. And the fact is that the party kept the revolution alive, which is why if the party had not been there, how the Black liberation movement would be characterized today would be quite different, and may not even have been reached, the characterization may not even reach the light of day. Because with the assassination of Huey P. Newton, we saw the massive media attempt to undermine the revolution, characterizing Huey as a bum, and just the worst kind of slander. And we said in the African People's Socialist Party, by the time of Huey P. Newton's funeral, we would have defined who Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party were. We would do that. And a massive campaign, and we organized throughout the street. So a part of what I want to say is that the African People's Solidarity Committee was there. We created African People's Socialist Solidarity Committee as a component of our revolutionary struggle. We were not quite clear exactly what that meant all the time, but we knew we were opening up a new front. And said that we moved exactly to California from Florida, moved from California from Florida for the purpose of creating a base area. That's how we sort of characterize it from there. Built the solidarity movement, worked the solidarity movement, and then extended the struggle of there. And this is one of the things that kept the Black Revolution alive during the time where it was under assault. So I think it's really important, this history that we're talking about and what you've shown up to now. I know you asked a question probably of some significance before I started my rant just now, but I was just really moved by what I saw to see Mark Anderson, walking with the placard, US out of Somalia, pigs out of the African community. And that's somebody who's been in the movement for 35 more years, and to look at Allison, to Maureen, Janice, Ruby, yourself, other comrades, and then people who have been in, they are newcomers because they only been around for 20 years or so. I mean, to see this and this a protracted struggle and how this has changed the world, how it's changed, I mentioned, the slander, the headwinds from the Black liberation movement, but from white groups, a remarkable ultra-leftist, revolutionary Marxist communist organization that came out with the statement upon the founding of the African People's Solidarity Committee that this wouldn't work. The white people working under the leadership of the African working class, because somehow that meant people working against their own interests. And I thought that was a very extraordinary statement to come from this pseudo-Marxist, super Marxist kind of organization. And then, of course, the attacks that somehow APSC was white lesbians working under the leadership of Black men. And the fact of the matter is, it started then. It's not over in terms of the slanderous attack that's made because of this relationship. But guess what? What that is a criticism of the continuing existence and the role, the revolutionary role of the African People's Socialist Party. So the white people this, the white people that. What they're saying is that the party should not have survived. The party should not have introduced a new front to the African Revolution. The party should not have opened up new arenas of struggle and extended the struggle for reparations, for Black power into the colonizer community itself. And the party should not have extended the leadership of the African proletariat over most of the social and political space inside this country and much of the world. Well, we're here.
Uhuru. Thank you so much for that answer and that discussion that you're having, and the leadership of the African working class, and I mean, the party not only as the leader of the party and the party itself through practice and through its incredible development in history, as you're saying, not only solve the political problems of the revolution, like you just went about it scientifically and analyzed why couldn't the African working class win? Why couldn't it, what happened? But but just the fact that you did that in the heat of battle, that was never, you never had a day of rest, just in the heat of battle, rushing in from different kinds of campaigns and struggles to start writing at your desk before computers and all that, start writing these books and this analysis and summing up what was really happening in the world through the eyes of the African working class. And it was electrifying for that to be happening. But you also created a strategy that the party has worked with its entire history. And that is so historic because that has been, in some ways, the guiding blueprint of the party. And it, and out of it came the formation of APSC. And I want you to talk about that a little bit. And also the party's incredible and inspiring unity. Unity is not even the word. International solidarity isn't a word, but with the oppressed and colonized peoples of the planet Earth, that the party has proven over and over again with its solidarity with the indigenous people, with the Palestinian people, with even the Irish, with the Nicaraguans and El Salvador, that the party would do anything because it saw, and with the Mexican, Unión del Barrio. And I just wanted you to address that.
Well, I think it should be. I think it should be addressed because, as you mentioned, the party has been informed by, our strategic objectives almost since our inception. I mean, for the one thing, we were declared we were going to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. What did that look like was the question. And so this is something we were working with all the time within the party. We had formulated a strategical process. And then we were asked in the 1970s to come to a conference that was held at Amherst it was being sponsored by Comrade Maxwell Stanford, or Akbar Muhammad Ahmed, he was known as the time, and who as an incredible leader in his own right in terms of the struggle of our people and what have you. And he asked me to present a position for tactics and strategies for Black liberation. He asked me to do this, and this is at a time where the party had concluded that one of the strategic objectives we had to have was to win the leadership of the African liberation movement, of the pro-independent sector of our struggle over the movement itself. We were in a hot contest with the assimilationists, with the forces who had united the liberal bourgeoisie, who had crushed the revolutionary movement and had pushed the idea of colonialism out of it. The self-determination was not to be discussed anymore. Malcolm is dead. The Black Panther Party dead or nearly dead. Anything that was talking about colonialism had been pushed out of the way. So part of what we saw strategically was absolutely necessary was to win the leadership of the anti-colonial or the pro-independent sector of this movement again, to build it, to push it, to keep it in front. This was not just a party, because we said we involved in a struggle for national liberation. So that's part of what we had to do, raise up the entire struggle for national liberation as the overall overarching leadership of the struggle that we were involved in. We did that. And we are the ones who promoted that. And in the process of doing that, we created the African National Reparations Organization, African National Prison Organization. And these are things that we tried to do while united with other sectors of the so-called pro-independence movement. And every instance it failed and we would end up being attacked. We got attacked around the NRO, the African National Reparation. Says it's going to be all of us, not the parties. It's going to be the movement of the national liberation struggle, the pro-independence movement. We will lead this collectively. That's what we said. And then instead, what we had was we could not get a single one of those organizations to work with us. And they would come and they would attend the tribunals that we would have from time to time, but they would never participate in helping to build it. The same thing happened with the African National Prison Organization, coming out of the Dessie Woods work. I met with comrades and said, look, this is what we need to do. And we talked about how we can unite the pro-independent sector of the movement, and the prison question became one of the things. And then we organized in Louisville, Kentucky in 1979?
1979.
The conference to build. It was an incredible conference. But the forces who were associated with a particular organization that's supposed to be part of the national liberation movement, the pro-independence movement, they came and attempted to crush it there. And then when that didn't succeed, they rushed back to New York and created their alternative thing when it was supposed to be an organization of all of us. So, but part of what was really helpful about that is it really began the process of clarifying for us that within the struggle for national liberation, there is always raging a class struggle. There's a class struggle that exists inside the struggle for national liberation. So all Africans are colonized, but liberation means something different to the petty bourgeoisie, to the would-be neo-colonialists than it does to the African working class. And so this is what we continue like to run into in terms of that whole process of development. So we developed tactics and strategy. The first most important thing on there was the people. African people had to be won to the position of political independence. To say, if the people are not won to it, there ain't gonna be no political independence. From all of our existence, we recognize the centrality of the masses of the people and then the masses of the African working class. And so that's how we started. That's how we said that the question of reparations, for example, is not just a question for briefcase toting lawyers or would-be lawyers, politicians, but the masses have to accept this. This is the question that we moved all along. And then what we did was this tactics and strategy helped us to recognize that we had to win all kinds of forces to unite with African people, not just in sympathy, not just that we should be free, but unite with us in the struggle to achieve independence from US tyranny, from US imperialism. And that was one of the things that helped to inform us about how the African People's Solidarity Committee would be functioning. This inside the United States itself, initially, the African People's Solidarity Committee took it out to the world. And at this time, as we said, that we were the weird people on the block, that APSC was weird. We were weird for having this relationship with APSC. And now APSC, the African People's Solidarity Committee, an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, has set the terms for what white people have to do in order to have any legitimacy in the struggle for liberation. So, and this was the way that the African People's Socialist Party extended the leadership of the African proletariat over much of what would be the struggle for communism, for socialism in this country and elsewhere through this process. So, Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru. Well, thank you, Chairman. And I just think this is so important about the strategy of the party and how the political theory and the actual organization of the party and the work of putting that on the ground needs a strategy that guides it. And that strategy informed the foundation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and also the relationship with Union de Barrio and the stance with other national liberation forces around the world. And, you know, this whole
But that's also the stance of the proletariat.
Yes.
Because if you remember 1979, that's when the Iranian students captured that nest of spies in Tehran, and the so-called Iranian hostage crisis began. And white people in this country, you know, went berserk with people. They began to do things like attack and sometimes kill Arabs, anybody wearing a turban, because they didn't know an Iranian was not an Arab. They had no idea. In fact, most of the geography lessons come when U.S. imperialism is in trouble. That's when they learn something about some place in the world. And when that happened, the African People's Socialist Party in Gainesville, Florida, the conference we were doing, the city where one of the most prestigious universities in the state of Florida is located, University of Florida. The college students were having nighttime rallies, you know, saying stuff like "Sand niggers go home" and "Send the Klan to Iran." These were their slogans. And so the African People's Socialist Party organized a mobilization of African people in solidarity with the people of Iran and with the Iranians who were under assault in the United States. And we were attacked physically. Mobs attacked the first mobilization that we did. And then there were nationalists, Black nationalists, who were saying that you shouldn't have been marching anyway because the Iranians are white any damn way. This was the kind of politic that we had to confront. But the African People's Socialist Party is an internationalist organization and is an organization of the African working class. And the African working class has no sympathy for any kind of oppression against anybody, and we recognize the relationship, the significance of any attack and victory over imperialism, and that the Iranian people were engaged in a just struggle, and their victory would translate into our victory. Whether we had any kind of political relationship with them or not, we knew that what we were looking at is a crisis of imperialism, and we had a responsibility to deepen that and to reach out to the Iranians, and we did reach out. I mean, we had incredible relationship with Iranians, you know, inside this country, with Palestinians inside this country. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's powerful, and it's always been that. I mean, the party's always been the first in a deep bond, as with Union de Barrio, which that relationship is over 35 years, I believe, very, very long-standing organization of the organized Mexican Revolution, and, you know, just so many different fronts, speaking in solidarity with the Palestinians, like you said, the demonstrations and the relationship with Iranian students, and just so many incredible times, you know, in the history of the APSC that we've had the honor of being part of. And also seeing, Chairman, you know, the leadership of the African working class and the significance of that, because as we know, the African working class is the despised sector of the world, you know, despised by imperialism, despised by parasitic capitalism. And that what we've seen is that the organized African working class is even more despised. It is under attack constantly. And, you know, we've seen that over the years as the counterinsurgency, because even as the white left couldn't admit it, the US government knew and said in the COINTELPRO papers that basically the Black Revolution was the weak link inside the US. It was the greatest internal threat since the Civil War to the US. It understood that it was the leadership, but, you know, many white liberals and leftists denied that and joined the attack, and have done that historically. And I just, you know, just wanted to address that, because, you know, this fact that the state and white opportunism would use this party's solidarity movement, the extension unto the belly of the beast that helps break the encirclement and isolation of the African Revolution, that it would attack the solidarity movement is what the state does. That's something, as you said, that's happened over and over again. And that, that it's so clear that the African working class must lead and does lead. And that anybody that unites with the state attack on that, the party solidarity movement is the height of white nationalism right there, to say that white people would lead this incredible movement. And, I just wanted you to address that, because I do know, again, that the party is so serious, Chairman, as you know, you are so serious. The party aspires and is doing everything possible to overturn the system, to overturn parasitic capitalism, US imperialism, and to reunite Africa, which is the cornerstone of parasitic capitalism. And it's about doing that. And that is the only thing it is about. And I just, any white person who jumps off the pedestal, stands in solidarity and wants to, work for reparations under the leadership of the African Revolution has to expect that we haven't seen anything yet. We can see what the US did to the Black Revolution of the 1960s. It killed, it maimed, it murdered, it tortured, it still has people in prison today, such as Sundiata Acoli. Just that it stoops at nothing. A counterinsurgency is a war without terms, and it will do everything. And to, and to come into this and not take seriously what our role is an error, because we have to, this is about revolution. And the world revolution is led by the African working class, Chairman. I just wanted to have your...
Yeah, I just think that's really important, because the thing is that white people have won the enmity of peoples around the world, and certainly of African people in this country. And there's a justifiable anger, to some extent, hatred, fear, a whole array of emotions that African people experience when it comes to the question of white people, because in general, white people abandon a relationship with the rest of humanity for their bellies and pocketbooks, and how white people benefited from slavery. And all the white people benefited from slavery. It doesn't matter whether they owned the Africans or not. They benefited from the whole colonial domination of the world. And of course, the thing is that this is what helped to shape and determine the attitudes and stances of white people, this material benefit. And I think it's important to say that, because white people are human beings who came into this relationship with the rest of us through the advent of slavery and colonialism, the relationship that we're dealing with right now. And so their children are fed, your resources are acquired, your future is determined and predicated upon maintaining this relationship. And so, and it has been something that white people have eagerly and enthusiastically carried out. Even, the mythological white working class, in fact, has been on the front lines of the most brutal assaults, so, like on African people and what have you. So it's a well-earned thing. And then there's this assumption that prevails in this, in much of the world, perhaps most of the world, because imperial white power dominates most of the world. Most of the world lives under the thumb of imperialist white power and have been susceptible to how it has defined the world and people's relationship in it. And so Africans have been defined out of humanity almost, and as bestial, we can't learn, we can't lead, we can't do anything ourselves. And so, and that sometimes seeps into the consciousness of African people, but certainly it's true of white people. So when you see this relationship, then it's easy to incite people that something wrong with the party because the party has this solidarity committee. The solidarity committee is getting all the money. The solidarity committee is this and that, et cetera. But what they're really criticizing is the continuing existence and success of the African People's Socialist Party in pursuit of this revolutionary movement to overturn our relationship with imperialism. There's no force that we deal with that criticizes us based on our political line, on our theory or anything. Doesn't even try to do that. It goes to the gutter. It goes to the most obscene places that it can go to and come up with these slanderous kinds of accusation. How do you defend yourself from slander? I think the biggest problem that you have is when you start trying to defend yourself from slander. What you do is say, this is what the foundation that we stand on, this is our trajectory. When you just showed that PowerPoint right there, that was a statement of the African People's Socialist Party, our history, what we stand for, and what the battles that we've been involved in and our successes. And the primary success that we have is that we are more than 40 some odd years old. And historically, the African liberation movement in this country has only successfully existed for someplace 3, 4, 5 years, never long enough to achieve political maturity, to achieve experiences and things like that. Here we are, more than 40 years later, the African People's Socialist Party, and we continue to develop, continue to struggle and developing cadre. We're going to win. And guess what? The North American people, we're not afraid of white people. There was a time where the world was afraid of white people. That's not true anymore. We understand that white people are people and that there are material interests that white people have. And that what we do, it can define those interests, and we can even help white people separate themselves from in their voluntary alienation, separation from the rest of humanity, and join in a revolutionary movement that would change the world so that they don't have to be frightened little animals every day. They don't have to be living at their pocketbooks and opportunistically requiring the rest of the world to be enslaved so that they can eat and have a better life than everybody else, that they can stand up and fight against this social system that's responsible for bestializing women, that's destroying the climate, that's doing all these other things that in this economy based on slavery. That's what capitalism is. Capitalism has its origin in slavery and colonialism. It can't be anything other than what it is. It earned the enmity of the peoples of the world, and making it necessary for chumps like Saunders and Ocasio and all these other people now to claim that they are some kind of socialist, when their socialism presupposes the ability to exist side by side with capitalism. It doesn't even require the destruction of capitalism. And the reason you know that's the case is because they haven't joined the African People's Socialist Party. They haven't joined the African Socialist International. They haven't joined the African People's Solidarity Committee. They, even if they were militant enough to do that, and they're not that militant to talk about it, about the real socialism, they haven't created the vehicle to make that happen. We have. And so I just wanted to say that that the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the attacks on the African People's Solidarity Committee, as quiet as it's kept, is an attack on the revolution. Not just the revolution in general terms, but the revolution under the leadership of the African proletariat, under the leadership of the African working class, which is the African People's Socialist Party, that has been forged over more than 40 years of all these struggles that we are talking about now, including the struggle to define the relationship between the white people and the rest of us in the world, and to solve the problems of how to take the revolution beyond just the confines of the so-called ghettos, the colonial ghettos and barrios and what have you. Take the revolution to white people so that white people have to face the consequences of their history and have the opportunity to overturn this relationship they have with everybody else and join with the revolution, because white people can't do it by themselves, yourselves. And so it's going to take the leadership of the advanced detachment. And I think it's a splendid opportunity right now that we are faced with. And so we're going to see more slander, more slander, more slander, and there are going to be chicken-hearted people who will fold in the face of the slander. They're going to be timid people, but it's a class question. And that's why they're going to fold, because they need a reason, a rationale, a political line to end this relationship they have with the African proletariat, because the African proletariat means the end of the world as they know it. It means the end of this kind of social system. So anything that can justify, can validate my reasons for jumping ship, you know, there are going to be people who do that. But there are other people, the majority of whom are going to lock arms with the revolution and going to become what it is necessary to destroy the social system for the emancipation, certainly of Africa and the African working class, but for the toiling masses of the world.
Yes, Chairman. And, you know, just to be talking about revolution and the strategy for it in such a serious way, and the party working 24/7 to make it happen. Imperialism is always on, keeping itself in power and oppressing the people on the planet Earth. And the party works hard, works tirelessly to deepen the crisis of imperialism and build the fighting strength of the African Revolution. And Chairman, you have written a lot and talked a lot about, and you just mentioned, white opportunism, the opportunism of white people. And you know, you have written that white people are bound by, guided by our stomachs and pocketbooks and bank accounts at the expense of the toiling masses of the world, as you say. And I just feel, you know, opportunism is white violence. It's white people carrying out the colonial state. It's our self-interest. I just wanted you to talk about this question more. And
I think that's important, because it's not name calling. When we say the opportunism, you know, we're not name calling. We're not talking about white people being mutants, and we're not talking about white people being a consequence of genetic engineering that separate them, white people, from the rest of humanity. We're saying that there's a material basis for what white people do. And we say, what is opportunism? Opportunism is selling out the long-term interest, betraying the long-term interest of the revolution, of the proletariat, of the working class, for the benefit of the petty bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie itself. That's what opportunism is. And what we find is that white people get paid. I mean, there's a time in the development of capitalism where the capitalists actually allowed the white working people, white people, to get on board and to share in the booty, to share in the bounty, to share in the loot that was coming from colonized peoples around the world, to give them a stake in the existing social system, so that white people fight harder than anybody. Even if they fight, have an argument with their ruling class, you don't see them saying, I'm fighting with the ruling class so that the Africans and other working people can be free, or less the African and working people can be free under our leadership, is how, if they might mention it at all. No, this thing is rotten. Opportunism is foul. And it happens in the African community. That's what neo-colonialism, that is even people who we see who would grab the party's line or sectors of the party from the African community and try to use it against the revolution, because, and what that means is that they want a solution short of overturning the social system. They want a solution that can satisfy and they want a solution that does not require overturning the social system, which is the only way that African workers and the African nation and all the toiling masses can ever be free. And so that's the basis of opportunism. And so we're not calling you a bad name because you're a sellout. I mean, that's just an objective definition of opportunism. And it is something that's so easy in the white world for white people to do. We engage in struggles all the time and have historically engaged in struggles. And the questions always come up. Well, the white people always betray. They always go up. We, even in the 60s, we used to say, when the hippies were supposed to be all about it, when people made these great careers for themselves as white radicals and things like that, you know, time comes, the crisis deepens, people take baths, cut their hair, and join their fathers' firms, which is what we saw happen all across the board. And some of the most notorious white leftists, white communists in the United States did exactly that. And so what we're saying is they didn't do it because they were white. They were doing it because they're opportunists. They're opportunists because they have been seduced by the benefits. And all of the benefits are not material. All of the benefits are not just resources. There's what might be, for a lack of a better term, even the spiritual benefit of being so important, so white, so different from everybody else, so much better than Black people, so much better than Latinos. The missionary qualities that's brought out in masses of white people sometimes think they do you a favor, do African a favor because they speak to us or because they voted for Obama, which is something that, and that's why the whole racism concept, which is opportunism to the max, to fight against racism. You fight to make me like you. You fight to improve your situation under colonial capitalism, when the objective has to be, if anybody in the world is going to ever know freedom and happiness, to destroy the colonial control, colonial capitalism itself. And so, yeah, opportunism is there, and it has been there forever. And it hasn't just been a local thing. It's existed internationally as it relates to Europe and the rest of colonized and oppressed peoples around the world. And many people have not understood us. Sometimes we speak before Vietnamese, we speak before other countries and leftists and things like that. And they say, well, no, it's not like that. We're all together, all the workers. I'll be damned if all the workers are like that. The workers, we have to convince people in Venezuela that these white workers who you're talking about, these white people who are supposed to be so down with you, these white people are going to volunteer when the time comes. Well, many of them stop volunteering. But they will not do anything to criticize any attack that's being made on revolutionary peoples around the world. That's opportunism, because they benefit from it, because there's a material benefit from it, because they benefit from cheap oil that comes as a consequence of horrible conditions imposed on people in Nigeria and other places around the world, because they benefit from cheap cocoa, that where children are enslaved picking cocoa beans and the rest of that. They benefit from all of these resources, et cetera. That's why they are down with the social system. That is opportunism.
Yes, Chairman. And, when I just learned, I don't know just how deep it is what white people have done to Africans. It's not just opportunism, like you're saying, as an idea, just every single, like, as you said, every just, violent thing that humans can do to other human beings, white people have done, in particular to African people, in every kind of violence, psychological, mental, just betraying African people in the struggle over and over again, and just the lynching, the terror, the mutilation, the rape, the burning, it's very—
Black and white unite and fight. Black and white unite and fight. That's the basic opportunist line. Now, come not just from the white left, but from Negroes too, from Black militants of black and white unite and fight. Liquidate the critical questions, and somehow, yeah.
And that's why, that this whole thing that you have put out since day one of APSC, that the problem is not racism, it's colonialism, and white people are the colonizer nation. How liberating that is. I know for African people, because it makes the struggle very clear, and there's precedence on how colonialism has been defeated. And it's liberating for white people,
yes,
because it lets us know how we can end this opportunist, this parasitic relationship to the rest of the world. It's liberating to us too.
Yes.
And I just wanted you to say something about this question of colonialism, because it's a question that's really out there today, as you know. And
it's out there today because we pushed it out there. And even when you were talking about, looking at some of the placards, with Dessie Woods, smash colonial violence. We pushed it back. And this was part of the whole process of pushing colonialism back on the agenda so they can be recognized as what the hell is happening, as opposed to this vacuous and imperialist serving, concept of racism. We're fighting against racism. We're fighting to get white people to like us. And I think it should be a relief to white people of the colonizer nation too, to say that it's colonialism that's being fought for, it's fought against, it's colonialism, and that you can, because you're white doesn't mean that you have to take the stance that you take. Doesn't mean that you are doomed to this relationship with white power. It doesn't mean that. It means that it's possible that there is a possibility for you to step away from that and unite with other peoples around the world, because what we are fighting against is colonialism and not your white self as such, except to the extent that you see your white self as something that has priority and benefit for all the resources that's coming from the peoples of the world. This colonial question is profound. And the other thing about colonialism that's really important to recognize is that it's violence. There's no life under colonialism that is not violent. And because you hear this discussion, you hear this thing that passes as a damn debate that happened between sectors of the ruling class talking to themselves with Trump and Biden, and this concern about the violence and what have you. There's nothing that's non-violent about colonialism. Is not non-violent. There's every aspect of it is violent in the worst, most humiliating kinds of way. And the problem is that it's so ubiquitous. This violence is that the white world and many of the African people are used to it. So it's not like it's abnormal. And what's abnormal is somebody fighting against this violence. The violence is the poverty. The violence is the degradation. The violence is the ongoing humiliation. How in the hell can somebody be upset about a murder by the police murder of somebody, but not upset about how they took his head and ground it into the pavement while they were doing it? The common practice of treating African people like animals and what have you, like that. It is humiliating. It is humiliating people, men being snatched out of cars in front of their wives and children and forced to lay on their bellies and what have you while they are mistreated. This kind of stuff is an ongoing process of humiliation. The cops coming to your door, taking your children away, taking your son, your husband away, sticking them in prison forever. And this whole sense of helplessness that's imposed on the community when the community doesn't have permission to fight back. When the community doesn't have permission to kill that soldier who came into your community to take your child, take your husband. When the community doesn't have permission to break them out of prison. This is as they would do in Afghanistan, as they would do in any other place where they're colonized, right? That's colonialism, extremely violence, but the actual act of violence is one aspect of it. The threat of violence is something that all Africans have to live with colonized people all the time. And the actual violence with miseducation, no education, and the best education, which means that you have been recreated into some kind of white human being or inhuman white people, something to that extent. It's a violent, colonialism is violent all the time. Disease, they talk about how, the disease that make African people vulnerable to COVID-19. But, the truth of the matter is that COVID-19 has to compete with 1,000 other diseases that we are vulnerable to because of underlying disease. The thing is that that's the consequence of living under colonial domination, having no control over our lives, and our children not even being able to get a decent image of who they are, who their parents are, who their community is. They have no opportunity to do that. That we have been defined by the white man. The white man created the white man, and the white man created us as a poor reflection of who he is. That's the reality that we live with all the time. And the description of our relationship is one that demands the worst kind of humiliating existence for all, because we are told, and material, the world seems to bear it out, that we don't have anything because we are somehow inherently inferior. We are told that white people and our relationship is based on white people's generosity, the coming to to cure the noble savage. If there's any nobility at all, when it comes to Africa, there's even no nobility with the savagery that they suggest that we have. So this is the kind of stuff we live with all the time, and our children live with it. And this whole ridiculous thing, you can't fight back. This is the most obscene thing in the world. And of course, you can't fight back if you believe the problem is racism. Because if you believe the problem is racism, then what you have a responsibility to do all the time is to make the white people like you. And the white people will not like you if you pick up a brick or take up a gun or do something else to fight back against them. Wow, you violated the most important principle that has to do with racism and anti-racist kind of politics. That's the trap that many Africans are stuck with right now. And that's only because the US government succeeded in crushing revolutionary movement in this country and around the world, and allowed the petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie of the world to define reality for us. And that's what we have to recapture, take that back. And that's why it's so important for the African proletariat to have its own revolutionary party at this time. And the African Revolutionary Revolution, having its own proletariat party, has the ability to create an African People's Solidarity Committee, that we extend the revolution beyond just the barrios and the so-called ghetto colonies that we have, and make it necessary for the colonizer to have to contend with the Black Revolution in the neighborhoods that Black people might not even be able to enter without having to fight the police to get there. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Wow, this has been such a profound discussion. And I feel that, Chairman, that this discussion, this talk with you.
Chairwoman, just want to let you know we're coming up on time.
Pardon me?
Just want to let you know we're coming up on time. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Chairman, and say that this is a call to action. That how can we hear all of these ideas, these understandings that you are putting out and do nothing? How can we be satisfied with just marching or protesting, but accepting the fact that this system will never change? That how can we deny that there is a state, and it is a colonial state, and our history towards African people, and that this, you know, the blood of African people is bubbling up in every contradiction on this planet, and especially inside the borders of the United States, but also around the world. That the source of every contradiction is the assault on Africa and the parasitic sucking the blood of African people and oppressed peoples on the planet Earth. How can we walk away with that, from that? How can we walk away from that? Really, because it doesn't go away. It's, you know, it's a whole new thing. Once you understand African internationalism, you see the world totally differently. You see it everywhere. It's the invasion of the body snatchers, as you've said before. It's there. It doesn't go away. It's in everything. And it can't be solved except by the leadership of the African working class and revolution. This system has to go. And it can only go under the leadership of the African working class. And this is what gives us an opportunity to hook into humanity, to be part of humankind, to be part of the world, to not be what the world thinks of us, to separate ourselves from our own ruling class, to, you know, to say, no, we are part of this incredible human project that is going on, that is going to transform the entire world. When with the destruction of imperialism, which is incredibly positive, and the liberation of Africa and African people, to see this vicious profit motive, this colonialism, this self-interest, this stomach and pocketbook interest, you know, that's dominated the world for so long with violence and terror, is going to be gone. And it, you know, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a scientific thing, and it tells us to join APSC, the African People's Solidarity Committee. There is a roadmap for this, and that is the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and the African Revolution. And it's a world that I want to be part of. And once we are exposed to this, we want to be part of this, because I can't accept it. I can't walk away and see what is going on, what is happening every day, and what this system does in my name. I refuse to do that. And I think that millions of white people want to take that stand too, that this system has to go. African people will be free, and they're bringing with them indigenous, Arab, Asian, all oppressed and colonized peoples on this planet. And this is the future. This is the optimism of the revolutionary that we have learned, and we have from your leadership, Chairman. So I want to thank you so much, and we're going to have a Q&A in just a minute.
I want to thank you, Comrade Penny, for your history. I cannot overstate its significance and the role that you've played in struggling to help shape the African People Solidarity Committee, and how this struggle to take the African Revolution into the colonizer nation cannot be overstated. So I just want to say that. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. I want to salute, all the members of the African People Solidarity Committee for just their fierce stand of unity, of solidarity with under the leadership of the party, and just incredible forces and comrades. So Uhuru, and thank you again. And I'm going to turn this back over to Comrade Ali, and we will come back in a few minutes for Q&A and further discussion, Chairman. Thank you very much. Uhuru.
Uhuru, I just want to give a round of applause for that incredible discussion and those incredible presentations from Chairman Omali, Yeshitela, and the discussion between the Chairman and Chairwoman Penny. It was absolutely brilliant, and I learned a lot, and I hope that all of our viewers did as well. I know that all of our viewers did as well. So thank you, Chairman Omali, Yeshitela, and APSC Chairwoman Penny, for that profound discussion and African internationalist analysis, and the summary and the history and significance of APSC, and the call for white people to join under the leadership of the African working class led Vanguard Party. So just really want to salute and appreciate that again. And as Chairwoman Penny said, we will be going into Q&A shortly. So that's a reminder to please submit any questions in the Q&A feature on Zoom at the bottom of the screen. And if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, you can also go ahead and enter your questions in the comment section. But before we go into our Q&A, we're going to hear some messages from APSC members on what APSC means to them, as well as hear from some members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And then the African People Solidarity Committee Secretary General Allison Haney and Uhuru Solidarity Movement Chair Dessie Neville are going to tell you about how you can apply to join the African People Solidarity Committee and why you should consider joining. Uhuru.
Uhuru, my name is Maureen. I grew up in the 1960s in the Midwest, and I saw the rebellions of Black people in the city where I was born, Detroit, Michigan. I also saw the struggle of the Vietnamese people to throw the oppression that they were facing because of U.S. imperialism off of their backs, a courageous struggle. As a young person, I knew that I wanted to take a stand for justice, that I wanted to take a stand on the side of the Black working class, but I understood it as racism. Meeting the African People's Socialist Party and understanding African internationalism showed me that colonialism is the root cause of the oppression of African people and people everywhere. And the African People's Socialist Party has an organization where white people can take a stand to change that. A stand for reparations, a stand that puts us on the side of history of everyone who's fighting the system. It has been an incredible honor to live a lot of my life in this organization, and I encourage everyone in the white community to join the African People's Solidarity Committee. Uhuru. Uhuru means freedom.
This is Jamie Simpson, host of Reparations in Action, and I want to take this opportunity to offer a huge salute to the African People's Solidarity Committee, to Chairman Omali Yeshitela for having put out the call to found this organization 44 years ago in 1976, and for coming up with the vision of African internationalism, the worldview of the oppressed and colonized African working class. And I want to offer a huge salute to Chairwoman Penny Hess, the first white person to fully unite with this call, to fully make the African internationalist worldview her own worldview, and to each of you in the African People's Solidarity Committee, and to everyone who supports it, because this cadre organization, it does an incredible thing for us. It breaks up our alienation from the rest of humanity by giving us a way to genuinely struggle against our own ruling class and to unite with African people worldwide. Support the African People's Solidarity Committee, and if you're able, you must join. Thank you. Uhuru.
I'm from the generation that would watch the news on TV every night and witness the US Army burning alive Vietnamese children and villages with napalm. See the police and sheriffs inside the United States beating, torturing, imprisoning, killing African men, women, and children. In the face of this brutality, oppressed people have always resisted. When the US attacked the Black Power movement of the 1960s, it showed the face of the state that we as white people have never experienced. We can't ignore it. We can't run away from it. The whole social system is built on slavery and genocide that's carried out in our name. When I met the African People's Socialist Party and APSC, I was elated that I actually could have a principled relationship with African and oppressed people, take responsibility for our history of violence. We can be part of this heroic struggle led by the African working class to overturn the social system and build one where everyone can live free of exploitation and colonialism. Under the leadership of the APSP, we become cadre leaders, organizing our own community to join through genuine solidarity and reparations, and stand with oppressed masses who will win and are winning. Step into the future. Join APSC.
Nice.
Uhuru, I think I'm on screen, and I'm about to be joined by Secretary General Allison Haney of the African People's Solidarity Committee.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. I thought Ali was going to say something, but Uhuru, my name's Ali, and I'm very proud to be a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And I want to join in saluting Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess for that electrifying discussion and presentations that we just were part of, and unite with Chairwoman Penny in saying that this is a call to action. And we want to call on everybody here to participate and join the African People's Solidarity Committee with us. And, I just want to say, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela for the 50 or more years of leading the African Revolution to its conclusion, to its victory, and, to found the African People's Solidarity Committee, to have that vision and strategy, the scientific strategy of African internationalism, as was talked about, the chairman even presented to the whole African liberation movement. And, to have the vision and knowledge that white people like ourselves can be one and must be one and must unite on the side of the African liberation struggle. This is a scientific fact, and it's proven out by 44 years of practice and work. And I just want to say, too, that I want to salute Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, the profound leader of the African People's Socialist Party that I have the honor to work under her leadership, and is building an international liberated economy, anti-colonial economy for the African working class as part of the liberation of the African nation. And also salute the whole party membership and leadership, National Central Committee. And I also want to salute our chairwoman, Penny Hess, for her courage and her brilliance in her leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee for 44 years. And this has been profound, as the chairman has said. I want to, also just say what incredible opportunity for us to be part of this strategy and part of this history. As Penny said, we just touched on that history. That's the party's history, and it's profound. And I had the tremendous luck to join APSC, to meet the party in San Francisco in 1978 and hear the chairman speak. And it was mind-changing, life-changing. I didn't know what I was looking at. I have to say, I had no idea what APSC really meant as an organization that we now can really see. But I knew that the party was like no other organization I'd ever seen or encountered. And the chairman, as Chairwoman Penny and the chairman talked about, trained us to become cadre of the African Revolution. He trained us intensively, ideologically, politically, and in practice. What was the work? What is our work? What is our responsibility? How we carry it out? And forged us in the fire of struggle. And that was so important, as the chairman talked about, the opportunism, not just, all the opposition the party and the chairman had to face and counter, and our own opportunism, all the opportunist lines we brought into this organization from the white left and white feminism and all the opportunism. But the chairman and the party forged APSC through this fire and through this practice. And it took us 9 years, as Chairwoman Penny said, to actually unite with African internationalism and become cadre, to embrace that, to embrace this as our responsibility. And, we are calling on you to join this process, to be part of this, because, it's so important that we take a stand in this period. As Kitty said, and other people have said, it's so clear that APSC is the only strategy, and it's such an important role that the chairman and the party have laid out clearly for us to play, that we can play in destroying this foul, vicious, and violent colonial system that we participate in as the colonizer nation, and to build a different relationship under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. We have to be organized. We know we can't just be individuals out there protesting this or that. We have to be organized, but we don't just have to be organized in any old way. We have to be organized under the leadership of the African Working Class Revolutionary Vanguard organization that is going to bring about and is bringing about the end of this colonial system. So we want to call on you to participate. We want to call on you to join this organization, African People's Solidarity Committee, because it's a cadre organization. The party formed our cadre organization, meaning we take responsibility. We are committed. We are going to go the whole way. We're not just dabbling in this as an interesting thing to do. We've committed ourselves. We are revolutionary organizers and fighting for reparations as the way that we can redeem ourselves in history and turn around our relationship as colonizers. And this is such a bold and brilliant strategy that the chairman has developed and laid out and brought to life. So, the chairman has said many, many times that as white people, our dreams and our aspirations require drone strikes, require in Pakistan or elsewhere around the world, require the brutal repression of the African working class in this country, through the prisons, through every possible form of repression, as the chairman just very movingly laid out. And that, our way out of that relationship is to say no more genocide in our name, to go all the way in bringing this violent system to its death under the party's strategy. And, to become full-time revolutionary cadre, to take responsibility for our history and turn it around. And, it's such a profound thing that we have that opportunity. We must seize it. This is the time. This is the party's time, and we must seize it. And what else would we want to do with our lives anyway? I mean, there is nothing else that is going to go forward, lead the way forward, other than joining the African Revolution under the party's leadership and taking responsibility and building a movement for reparations, to the African working class in the white community, the Uhuru. So I just want to call on Comrade Dessie, Chair Dessie, to continue our call.
Uhuru, thank you, Secretary General Allison Haney. That was beautifully put. I completely unite with everything that you just said, and I want to join you in saluting this magnificent historic commemoration of the 44th anniversary of the African People's Solidarity Committee's founding by the African People's Socialist Party. I want to join you in saluting our leader, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and congratulate the chairman for the 44 years of this incredible organization that you built, Chairman, under the party's leadership. And I also want to salute and express my deep revolutionary appreciation and love to our direct leadership in APSC, the highest example of a white person taking the principled stand of solidarity with the African Revolution, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who's been fighting in the trenches for those 44 years that APSC has existed. So I salute the chairman, I salute the party, Deputy Chair Onazane Yeshitela, and all of the African People's Socialist Party, and I salute the veterans of the African People's Solidarity Committee, including our Secretary General, Allison Haney, and some of the other comrades that we heard from earlier. And I want to reiterate what Chairwoman Penny Hess was saying and what the chairman was saying in this event tonight, that the stand for reparations to African people, the stand for revolution, the stand for African revolution, this is not a trend. This is not a hashtag. This is not just a protest that we go out to from time to time when the tide of struggle is high and we can get our picture taken and be part of a particular moment. This is a long struggle. This is a long war that the party has been waging for decades now. The party has always been there through thick and thin, in rain or shine, building for the long term, building for the long haul revolutionary struggle, building the organization, building the theory, and building the cadre. And APSC is a dynamic organization of cadres. We have the honor to strive to be a cadre. We have the honor to strive to be what the African People's Socialist Party calls on us to be as solidarity forces. And you can see examples of what APSC does in the work that solidarity forces carry out in Uhuru Foods and Pies, in Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles, in the Black Power Blueprint, and in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, our mass organization, our mass political front, and so much more. And APSC means that wherever you are in this work, it means that you're going to take it even deeper, that you're going to take a deeper level of responsibility for doing this work, for doing more than just protesting, for raising the reparations, and for winning other white people to do this as well. So if you're already really active in USM, you're already really active in Uhuru Foods and Pies, you're already really active in the Black Power Blueprint, you're actually right where you need to be to go ahead and join the African People's Solidarity Committee. And this is a new era that we're in right now. The crisis of imperialism. I mean, the chairman did a brilliant live stream today summing up that so-called debate last night, which was basically an hour and a half of imperialism screaming at itself. The crisis of imperialism is deep. White power is a sinking ship. This is not the time to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I want to say to my comrades in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, including some people who I work very closely with, whose incredible stance I admire deeply, I want to encourage you. I want to embolden you to take this profound step towards joining the African People's Solidarity Committee. This is the time to deepen your stance, deepen your unity, and by extension, deepen the crisis of imperialism and deepen the unity between your interests with those of the African working class and colonized people worldwide. Become a full-time revolutionary. Do the work to end this violent colonial system. And what else are you going to do, as Secretary General Ali said? What else can we do with our lives? You only have this life to live, and then that's it. And if you're white, you didn't ask to be born in this time period, in this world, and on this pedestal of slavery and genocide of African and colonized people, but you were. And you're here now until you're not. So what are you going to do with this finite time that you have on this planet Earth when imperialism is still here and African people are fighting for their freedom? And the opportunity has been given to us to make this life that we've been given a life lived in a revolution, a life that will be added to the millions and billions of lives of Africans and indigenous and oppressed peoples who are playing a role in the birth of a new world without oppression and injustice. That's what it means to join the African People's Solidarity Committee. So if you're in USM, you're working hard, and somewhere in your thoughts, you've said to yourself, well, I want to join APSC, but I'm not sure if I'm ready. Here's what I want to say to you. If the words, I want to join APSC have crossed through your mind tonight, just stop there. You're ready. Do it. This is it. This is the time. This is the revolution. Join the African People's Solidarity Committee. Join, join, join. This is the organization for you. All you have to do is go to apscuhuru.org/join, fill out that form, take 10, 15 minutes to fill it out. It's simple, click submit, and within a day, a member of the recruitment office is gonna call you up and get you on the path towards being a revolutionary cadre under the leadership of the Vanguard Party of the African Working Class. It takes 6 months. You go through an incredible process, political education, studying the history, studying the discipline, getting the training, learning what it means, not just in theory, but in practice, to be a member of APSC. It's exhilarating, it's life-changing. I joined APSC about a decade ago, and I have never looked back. It is the best decision, the most meaningful decision I've made in my life. So join the African People's Solidarity Committee. Let's carry out our historic responsibility under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Your sponsor, your unit will bring you through this process, theoretical development, learning the party style of work, developing your leadership skills. We can do this. We can make this revolution under the leadership of the party. So this is the party's time. This is the time to bring all the resources stolen from African people for hundreds of years back to the African Revolution and kick the ass of the white ruling class. Join the African People's Solidarity Committee, apscuhuru.org/join. Uhuru.
Uhuru, what an incredible call to join. And I just want to fully unite with that call. People who are watching to join APSC. Now is the time. Go ahead and get signed up at apscuhuru.org. So really appreciate that call to join from Secretary General Ali and Chair Dessie. And now we are going to go into our question and answer section. So if you haven't written down your question yet, go ahead and write that down in Zoom or on Facebook and YouTube. But in the meantime, while you go ahead and do that, we are going to start with some questions that have already come in. So the first one is a question from Leah Fifield in Minneapolis, who's on Zoom, and said, is there a place online, a book, etc., that people can go to learn the complete history of APSC and USM?
No. And that is a self-criticism, because there needs to be, and you know, it must be written. There's something a little bit about APSC, I think, in overturning the culture of violence, but no, this is something that the world must know about. And as the chairman said, it is the history of the party. It is the history of the party. This is part of that. We're an organization of the African People's Socialist Party, but this is a story, a history that must be written. We are going to have some more events over the next year that we will lay out a lot more of the history as well. Certain campaigns and incredible memories, revolutionary memories we have, and, you know, being forged by the leadership of the party in the heat of struggle on the ground in Oakland in the Oakland years. We lived outside. We lived on the streets, literally. We were out there sometimes still 3 o'clock in the morning getting petitions signed at all night grocery stores, and you know, just party members were being arrested almost every day for doing things like making the mayor and the city council walk out because of protests, and leaping over the barrier to sit in the mayor's seat and call the meeting back to order under the leadership of Everett. I mean, just so many great There's so much to say. It is such a brilliant, exciting, amazing history. Chairman, just really salute that. And I also want to salute what the comrades, Secretary General Ali and Jesse and those fabulous, fantastic videos, Comrade Kitty, Maureen, and Jamie, our comrades. So I just appreciate the statements that we've just heard. But Chairman, is there anything that?
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's incredibly significant. As the question was being read, I was thinking about even the need for the party to do that kind of writing as well. I watched the PowerPoint that we just saw, and it told some of the things. And as I mentioned earlier, part of what it really revealed is the protracted nature of this struggle. And, APSC was founded like 4 years after the founding of the party. Of course, the party's history is longer than that, in the sense that JOMO and the various component parts, that organization that went into creating the party go back to, like 1966, 10 years prior to the founding of APSC. But and there's a lot of history, the Pitts and Lee battles in Florida, where these two African men were on death row for 12 years after killing somebody, white man, that white guy had already confessed to, and they were going to leave him there. And the party, forced that, in the struggles in Pensacola, Florida, where, and I'm mentioning these things because it's really important, this whole concept of somehow one becoming politically relevant because, they've gone to some protests, but that were totally not associated with actually building revolutionary movement struggles, mobilizing people, communities, and things like that, which is what it's all about. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, and almost every day the protesters are out, but you wouldn't know it, unless you went someplace to find a specific area. It doesn't really influence anything that's happening with masses of people. But that's not the party's work. Has been quite different from that historically, from the very inception of the party, and so these are stories, and I agree. The APSC, is the story of APSC is the story of African People's Socialist Party, and we have to, work to, to tell that story, to write that.
Uhuru. A great response. So now we have a comment from Benjamin Prado, the Undersecretary of Union del Barrio, on Facebook, says, "That's right. Political independence is fundamental to self-determination and liberation." Uhuru. So
Uhuru.
Benjamin. And then we have a question from
Comrade Ali.
Yes.
That history would include, Susan Worth, whose parents had her kidnapped. You talk about slander, you think it's not just something that's insignificant. It's the same way they did with Garvey. They set the conditions for killing and murdering and destroying people in the revolutionary movement. And we talk about the attack on the Solidarity movement, where this woman's own parents had her kidnapped, and to deprogram her, because the other line that you hear about the party is that we're some kind of cult. And we are a cult because we have a unified worldview, because they don't like that. They want to be able to come in and tell you a story and break you from the party and have you have a different political line from the party, from the revolution. And so you hear this garbage that we are a cult, and there may be others, there may be such a thing, but I've never heard of damn constitutional cult, a cult with a constitutional cult that holds congresses I guess, to unite cultees or something to that effect. But Susan was kidnapped, and but her parents had her kidnapped, and it was an African man who was supposed to play some kind of role in I don't know what you call decultifying or whatever the hell it is, and they messed her up badly. I mean, she ended up committing suicide. You know, I mean, that's one story, and then there's a story of Raya Fogarty, who we met when we were organizing the first tribunal in Brooklyn, New York. And when she was supposed to be coming to a meeting and didn't show up, causing some concern, you know, about this person we just recruiting, and she doesn't even show up. And then we find out, of course, she didn't show up because on her way to do the work to build for the tribunal, she passes cops beating a Puerto Rican, and she jumped on the cops and got arrested. I mean, this is part of the, you know, what we talk about when we talk about the history of African People's Solidarity Committee is important because it helps everybody in APSC and in the Solidarity movement in the world to know what you can do. And it's a part of the legacy, it's a part of the swag that emerges inside the organization and says, yeah, this is who we are. And because it's not just Susan's story, it's not just Raya's story, it's the story of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the whole USM, the whole Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And of course, it's the story of the African People's Socialist Party. So yeah, Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate you deepening that. So next we have a question from Comrade Choice on Zoom, who says, Uhuru, thank you, Chairman Omali and Chairwoman Penny, for your tireless efforts, leadership, and commitment to the African working class and oppressed peoples the world over. Do you feel that the racial discord that is currently at a fever pitch has been spearheaded, cultivated, and financed by the colonial elites to keep us from recognizing that we have a common enemy and that the APSP and African People's Solidarity Committee is the spearhead movement that can galvanize the working class the world over to rise in unity to undermine and overthrow the present imperialist system?
Well, what they call racial discord is actually the consequences of colonialism. And the whole philosophical foundation of the whole imperial colonial capitalist system is what they call racism, this whole assumption of the supremacy of white people, and which is something which, embraced by white people, help white people be united with the bourgeoisie, with the ruling class. So it's colonialism. And in terms of the discord, even if there were not Proud Boys and Donald Trump, you would have the struggle before the Proud Boys and before Donald Trump. You had the struggle of colonized people in this country and around the world trying to break free. There's no kind, nice colonialism. There's no colonialism without discord. There's going to be discord as long as there's colonialism. And so in terms of whether or not there is work that's done by the ruling elite, the colonizer, to mobilize extra work, to mobilize the colonized population to attack the colonial subjects, I mean, that happens. And it's something that I'm sure is being, the flames are being fanned right now. But look at what we see. Even if that's the case, you can't just see racial, quote unquote, discord. You got to see millions of people who've never demonstrated in their lives, never participated in protests, who've been thrust into motion by African people subsequent to the most recent and egregious murder, colonial murder. And I think that's really important. So yes, the so-called discord is happening, but anytime African people can act independently, and that becomes generalized, then we see white people forced to. Consciousness, taking a different kind of characteristic. The question continues to be who's going to lead it, but So the discord, quote unquote, is just one aspect of what we're seeing. The most important thing that we're seeing is the fact that there's protests everywhere. There's actually been uprising, burning down police stations, and all of this action, regardless of whatever kind of self-serving motivations that you will find in some anarchists and other kinds of group. But it's the African proletariat that's kicked that off, that's led that, whether it's in Ferguson, St. Louis, whether it's in Minneapolis or the various other places where you see these uprisings, like have occurred. So that's the thing, that's the remarkable thing that's happening right now. The question for you and for me is who leads it? That's the struggle. That's the thing that we are dealing with right now, how to take, and when I say who leads it, I don't necessarily mean who's gonna organize the next protest, anything like that, but how do we intervene, like in this moment in history, such as what we are doing right now, to take some science and understanding into the spontaneous activity that can give it direction under the leadership of the advanced detachment of the revolution, so that what is currently, what has been like revolutionary national democratic struggle, historically under the leadership of the African petty bourgeoisie, that the African working class, the proletariat, now assumes the leadership of this revolutionary democratic struggle and takes it beyond the limits of the petty bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie into revolutionary conclusions and enter into the fight to destroy colonialism and to create a socialist world.
Uhuru. Thank you for that profound response, Chairman. And our last comment that we have is from Carrie Austin in Portland, Oregon on YouTube, who says, "This session has answered the questions that I've been bouncing around in my brain for the past 3 months since I found USM." So salute to our USM member, Carrie Austin out in Portland. Uhuru. Uhuru, so those are our last comments and questions. And before we close the Q&A, I just want to see if Chairman and Chairman Penny, if you have any last things that you want to add before we go to announcements. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Well, I just want to thank you, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I want to thank the African People's Socialist Party and the African Revolution for giving us the opportunity to be something in the world, to join humanity, to be part of, to rectify our relationship to African people and the world, and to, just the exuberance of that. And a lot of white people are suffering. A lot of white people don't know the way. They see imperialism in crisis and they think it's their crisis, and it doesn't need to be. A lot of white people are in suicide, drug addiction, alcohol, and so much so that the ruling class has written about it over and over again in this period. And they say that even during COVID, that the opioid death and addiction has skyrocketed among the white population. And, we have to commit national suicide. We have to jump off this pedestal. We have to end our unity with our own white ruling class that is the enemy of this planet. And we can do that by standing on the other side, standing on the forward side of history, standing under the leadership of the African Revolution, which gives life and hope and is life affirming and is about destroying, a death affirming society that we live in, and gives us a future. It gives us a future on the forward side of history. And I thank the chairman, I thank the African People's Socialist Party for giving us this opportunity in life to rise up, to be something. Let's, to be human beings, to, be part of the future that we've been given the opportunity to do by carrying out our responsibilities, the mandate, go into the belly of the beast, unleash all the resources, turn it back over. That's the true redistribution of the wealth on the planet. You know, launch into what the rest of the world experiences, and join humanity and be part of the future. Uhuru, Chairman. Thank you, and the party.
Uhuru, thank you. And I want to thank the leadership of APSC and all of the members of the Uhuru movement. And I just want to say that one of the things that's been striking to me, and especially during this deepening crisis, is that a lot of white people want African leadership. That's been a striking thing. They want African leadership. Yes. And they want a no-nonsense African leadership. I mean, they have also had experiences with the double talking and spineless forces that call themselves militants and Black leftists and things like that. And they want to make a full break with their history. And they recognize, many of them recognize that that it's the African working class that can take them into a genuine relationship with the rest of humanity. So I know that's the case. I know that's the truth. And so yes. I just want to say that 44 years and still going strong. And Uhuru, comrades.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for being on this program. Really want to salute you and also salute Chairwoman Penny Hess. That was just an incredible program that we had this evening, and yeah, this was amazing. Uhuru. So I now want to take us into some announcements. I know everyone's excited after hearing this program to continue to take action, attend more events, get involved and organize. So I want to announce some upcoming things that we have going on. Next Wednesday, October 7th, an Uhuru Foods and Pies web event, Colonialism as Cuisine, Food Desserts in the Black Community. And to register, you can go to tinyurl.com/colonialism as cuisine food. Oh, sorry, it's not desserts, it's deserts. So let me reread that. Uhuru Foods and Pies web event, Colonialism as Cuisine, Food Deserts in the Black Community. To register, go to tinyurl.com/colonialism as cuisine food desert. Then on Saturday, October 17th, we have the March for Reparations to African People in Cities Across the US. And on Sunday, October 18th, we have a Zoom event. And for more information about the marches and teach-in, visit uhurusolidarity.org. On Wednesday, October 28th, APSC's next national study will be Reparations versus Wall Street and White Opportunism. November 6th through 8th, we have the 12th annual Black People's March on the White House in Washington, D.C. And the theme is Black Power Matters, Down with Colonialism, Black Community Control of the Police. And this is organized by the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. So start making plans to attend. Every Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern, tune into Omali Taught Me live from the Chairman's Facebook page and the Burning Spear TV and YouTube channel. And every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, tune in for Reparations in Action radio show on 96.3 FM in St. Petersburg, Florida, and streaming at blackpower96.org. And to find out more details about these events and about more upcoming events, you can go to theburningspear.com/events. So thank you so much, Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny Hess. And that concludes today's event, and we will see you at the next event. Uhuru.